Hello and welcome to a new tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to do block printing onto fabric or textile printing using lino. So to start with, making your lino blocks is exactly the same way as what you would do with printing onto paper. But for printing, you're going to be using it more like a stamp. So this is one that I've made before. Can you see that? So I'm going to show you how to make a little block, going to mount it, and then you can use this either to print onto pre-made products, so like bags or tea towels or t-shirts, or what I like to do is print onto big sheets of fabric, and then you can just make your own items. So here's an example of some of the fabric that I printed, which I then made into a lampshade, which was used by using this block there. I've got my lino there. I've cut it to size. I find when printing on fabric, I personally prefer having a square shape, especially if you need to line, if you do like tile printing, which what was shown on my lampshade, it's easier to line up when you've got a square. So I've cut a square out of my lino. I've stained it so I can see where I'm cutting, and I've just drawn a simple design on there, which I'm now going to cut out. I've cut my lino out, so you could use it just like this to print with, but because with textile printing you use it more like a stamp, it's quite difficult to keep hold of it, so I find it useful to mount it onto some card or a piece of wood, like that, and then when you're printing it you've got a better grip to it. This one has also been varnished, which makes it all waterproof, because most textile inks are water-based, so you use water to clean your lino with. So if you leave your lino, especially with traditional lino, if you leave it without no backing on, any water on the back is likely to dry out the lino completely and make it crack on the front. It's also likely to warp and to go a bit mouldy, so mounting it up, putting a layer of varnish on it will also protect the lino. So you could, if you got access to a saw and some wood, you could cut some little wood mounts. I'm just using what I've got lying around, which is some mount board. And I'm just going to got these few layers, and I'm just going to glue all these together. And I'm just using regular PVA. I'm just going to glue these together like that. And I'm going to do that with the rest of them, and then finally glue this on top. And then I'm going to leave this under some heavy books overnight, and then tomorrow I'll show you how to print. So my lino is now mounted onto some card, and at this point you want to varnish the sides and the back just to protect it from getting wet and any moisture getting onto the back of the lino. So you want like maybe some yacht varnish, that type of thing ideally. I don't have any varnish at the moment, so I've just so you can see, I've just gone round with some acrylic paint, just so you can see that you need to go around the edges and the back. And at some point, when I get some varnish, that's what I will do on the back of this. I've also drawn the design roughly on the back, just so I can see as I go printing, I can see what direction the pattern is going. So before you start printing, you need to have a soft surface underneath your fabric. Now you could just use a piece of foam or use an ironing board. Just protect it with an old tea towel or a bit of fabric. Or you can create your own one like this. And all this is a sheet of MDF, and it's got some wadding underneath and then a vinyl tablecloth over the top. And I'm just stretched it over the board, and then using a staple gun just fix it to the back. And then once you've gone all around the four edges, once your fabric's on there, it just gives you a bit more give underneath, and it will make printing a lot easier. So I've attached my fabric onto my textile printing surface. I've just taped it on the corner with some masking tape. Now, when printing on the fabric, you ideally want to use a textile ink. I know some people use regular Lino ink, which is perfectly fine if you're not going to wash the fabric at all. So if you're printing onto clothing or tea towel or that type of thing, you really do need a textile ink. And there's so many different types out there, so depending on your budget, it might be worthwhile getting small containers of each different types and see how each one prints for your project. For this project I'm using Permaset Aqua. It says it's for screen printing, but you can use it for lino as well. Another thing to remember, make sure you are using ink and not dye. Because textile dyes, they tend to be really runny and they will not print very well onto lino. So before we start printing, a couple more things you will need. You need a sponge or a sponge roller, and it's one of these that we're going to be applying the ink to the lino with. And it's also worthwhile having a lint roller on hand, because if, like me, you have a fluffy cat, you probably find fur everywhere. You might need to get rid of the fur or any bits of fabric off of your printing area. So to start printing, so I've just put, oh, you can hear my cat there. I've just put a bit of ink out there to try and steady the camera. For this I'm just going to use the sponge. So rather than just dipping it straight in there and then go straight onto the lino, I'm going to dip it in and sponge a bit off first, and then sponge onto the lino. And try and get an even coverage. It will probably look like you're filling in all the lines, but don't worry about that. Try and get an even coverage. And then let's move the camera over. Then decide which way round you want to print it. You want to place the lino down and just press. If you've got a bigger plate, you might find it useful to get yourself a little roller and just roll them on the back. Just helps with a bit of pressure. And then try not to lift it up like that. You want to lift it straight up. And then see, you got the print. So you need to keep re-inking up the plate and then carry on printing. So then you decide whether you want to do random prints or just do like a straightforward tile and just print, 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 or whether you want to rotate your block to get a different pattern, which again is quite useful having the image on the back of your lino. So I'm going to print the rest of this and I'll see you in a bit. So here's the finished print. Depending on what type of fabric you're using, you'll probably find it will seep through the back a bit. So if you're printing onto t-shirts or clothing or like bags, you want to make sure you've got like a piece of paper on the inside, just so it doesn't go all the way through. And depending on what type of ink you're using, it will let you know what type of fabric works best for that type of ink. Most textile inks work best on cotton or linen based items. So this is a cotton piece of fabric. And they will also tell you whether you need to set the ink, which most of them will require, and that's usually by applying some kind of heat source. So when your ink is dry, if you just use a really hot dry iron and just go over it for a couple of minutes, that should be enough. So this is the pattern with this block, and I've just done another one with a slightly bigger block, a bit more leafy in fact. So give it a go. Try printing on different colour fabrics as well, not just white, and see how you get on. Bye.